What's going on, everybody? Tom here with Keto Lifestyle, and welcome to another cooking video just for you subscribers out there. Now today is going to be another installation of our ketogenic barbecue series, and today we're making brisket. Yes, that is the staple of pretty much any barbecue joint. That's the first thing I try when I try a new place, so it's gotta be good. If you've never had brisket before, then you're in for a real treat. So hang on tight, guys, so I can show you how to make it. Welcome to the recipe. Now what we have in front of us here is a 16-pound packer brisket. So what a packer brisket is it's the flat and the point still together, and it's by far the cheapest way to buy a brisket. It also has a ton of fat on it. So what I like to do is I like to trim this down to between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of fat, and I save this fat to make tallow, which I will be making as part of this series as well. So go ahead and trim this to about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. If you leave too much on there, it can get a little bit gummy, and then we'll catch up and I'll show you how to separate the flat from the point. All right, now that we have this kind of fat cap trimmed up, I did burn through it in a couple places, but that's fine. We're actually gonna need to flip this over, and you're gonna see this giant fat vein right here. Now this is what separates the flat from the point. So you're gonna go ahead and follow this down and follow this fat vein all the way through until you're able to separate this part from what is gonna be basically this part on the underside. It's right here, and this kind of is double layered right here. So just follow this through to the other side like I'm gonna do here. My cutting boards are moving all over the place, but here is our flat and here's our point. So we're gonna go ahead and use this one right here for burnt ends, and then this is gonna be used for the brisket recipe. So if you're gonna follow both these recipes, go ahead and set this aside for another day or freeze it or whatever you're gonna do, but this is the cut that we're gonna be focusing on for this recipe. All right, everybody, I went ahead and set aside the point and the fat to make other recipes. So what we have here is the flat of the brisket and the beef dry rub that we made in this recipe right here, or it'll also be linked in the description. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're just gonna give this a generous coating of the dry rub. And what I do is I actually weigh the container before and after I spread this seasoning blend on there. That way I can get an accurate count of how much spices I use. That way I can track it in my macros appropriately. Now I do prefer to do both sides of the brisket, so this one's got a pretty nice coating on it. We'll go ahead and just pack that in there. And now we're gonna get the fat cap side of it with the seasoning as well. Now this side I did trim to about 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more fat. You don't want to leave all the fat on there because it just becomes a mouthful and doesn't taste great. So you do want to trim some of it off, but leave as much as you can since we are trying to make a high fat brisket here. Now once again I'm going to go through and just kind of pat this on, make sure that those spices are kind of really caked in there. Our brisket is now ready to cook. Now I will be cooking mine on a Traeger pellet stove, but you can do this just as easily in an oven. We're going to preheat our smoker or oven to 225 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we're going to place this directly on the grate. If you're using an oven, use a baking rack on top of a cookie sheet. Now keep in mind we're going to set this fat side up so that all that fat runs through our meat. Once the internal temperature has reached 160 degrees Fahrenheit, so about 6 hours, go ahead and remove your brisket from the smoker or the oven and wrap it in a double layer of aluminum foil. This allows us to finish the cook time without it getting too dry, and it also saves some of that moisture in there to kind of steam out the meat a little bit. Once you've sealed it in the foil, return it to the grill for another 2 hours until the internal temperature reaches about 204 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright everybody, this came out right when the temperature read 204 degrees. I usually aim between 204 and 208 to pull it, and then I leave it wrapped in the foil for about 30 minutes. So I went ahead and unwrapped it and put it here on our cutting boards. Now what you're looking for is the cross grain, because you are going to want to slice across the grain in order to get that kind of classic brisket texture. So for me, the cross grain would be right here. As you can see, you kind of get those brisket marks. Now as you guys can see, we do have about a 1/4 inch fat layer here, which is about what I'm aiming for. The meat is nice and tender, very juicy, you can tell just by feeling it. And if you look at that nice red smoke ring, that's exactly what we're looking for. Because this type of barbecue, that smoke ring is going to give you all the flavor. Now you're not going to have that if you did it in the oven, but if you did this on a smoker, you're definitely going to see that. And now that you guys have seen the recipe, it is time for the taste test. So what I have on my plate here is a slice of the brisket, but so that you guys can get a better view of what it looks like, I'm going to put the finished product on the screen right now. And now it is time for the taste test. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be tasting it without any type of sauce on there. But I really do enjoy brisket with the Alabama white barbecue sauce that we made earlier in this series. I'll put it in the card right now if you guys haven't seen that video yet. But the red sauce we made is also quite great if you don't like white sauce. Anyway, let's give this a taste. Now that is a delicious and tender brisket. Now the reason it's so tender is because we cut across the grain. If you cut with the grain, it's going to be chewy, and nobody likes a chewy brisket. Now let's talk about the flavor a little bit. First of all, we have that awesome dry rub that we made covering the brisket. So it's going to have that kind of salty, spicy smokiness from the dry rub. Below that's going to be a layer of rendered fat that, we left that 1/4 to 1/2 inch of fat on the brisket, and that is to keep the meat inside there nice and flavorful and tender. So that is basically my take on a brisket, and probably one of the best that I've had in a long time. With that, guys, I'm gonna go and close the video. If you liked the video, leave it a like. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section. And if you have not subscribed yet, do me a huge favor, guys, hit that subscribe button, show some love, and I will see you in the next one.